You know, folks, I was born in the 1980s, and some of my earliest memories is hearing my Republican grandfather and my Democratic uncle argue like Archie Bunker and Meathead on All in the Family. And I remember back then hearing a Republican president talk about tearing down walls. And I heard him talk about how that if walls was built to keep people out, those same walls could be used to keep people in. And I heard a Republican president talking about how that America was this shining light and that people wanted to come from all over the world to live here and they wanted to come here and live the American dream. And like I said, that was a Republican president that was saying those things back then. And even though my Republican grandpa and my Democratic uncle might sit and spar about politics, they both were on the side of democracy. And they both were on the side of freedom. And they both bought into this idea that we were the greatest country on earth. These days, I have a whole lot of people reach out to me from all over the world and want to talk about things. And I don't know how y'all was brought up in your part of the world, but here in America, we were taught to believe that we were the greatest and that everyone wanted to come here and better themselves. And everyone wanted to live that American dream. And that we were the freest of all countries. You know, all these other countries had all these restrictions. So, you know, going back to the 80s, when you had a Republican president talking about freedom and democracy and America being the shining light and tearing down walls, hell, even if you come up into the Bush years, even though I totally disagreed with George W. Bush on the war in Iraq, he was still a Republican president who was saying that we had to install democracy in the Middle East and remove a dictator. Nowadays, the Republican Party has completely hijacked and abandoned all of that, and they no longer stand on those principles at all. When you mention Donald Trump saying he wanted to be a dictator on day one or terminate the Constitution, they're perfectly okay with that as long as he's doing the things they would like to see him do. But if you'd have told me back when I was growing up as a kid, and I do believe if you could go back and my uncle and my grandpa was still alive for me to interrupt their argument and say, hey, did you know that the U.S. just got added to a human rights watch list because now we're not considered to be the freest place in the world anymore? I promise you that one issue alone would have brought my Archie Bunker grandpa and my meathead uncle together really quick, and they'd have said, wait a minute, no, that's not how this country is supposed to be. This article I'm about to read to you from Time Magazine is one I never thought I'd be reading in my lifetime. I find it to be truly disturbing, but I feel like we need to focus on stories like this and make more people aware that now this is how we are being viewed on the world stage. So we're going to go here to Time Magazine. I'm going to bring this up from Time. U.S. added to a global human rights watch list over declining civil liberties. The United States was added on Sunday to the CIVICUS Monitor Watch List, a research tool that publicizes the status of freedoms and threats to civil liberties worldwide. The move comes amid Donald Trump's assault on democratic norms and global cooperation, said Civicus. Let's go on right down on here. The Trump administration seems hell-bent on dismantling the system of checks and balances, which are the pillars of a democratic society, said the interim co-secretary general of Civicus in a press release. Restrictive executive orders, unjustifiable institutional cutbacks, and intimidation tactics through threatening pronouncements by senior officials in the administration are creating an atmosphere to chill democratic dissent, a cherished American ideal. Other countries on the watch list include the Democratic Republic of Congo, Italy, Pakistan, and Serbia. And folks, over the years, the one comment that I have made that has made MAGA more angry, and I have had more hate mail for saying that MAGA was the American Taliban. That is probably the most controversial thing I've said that's got me the most hate mail. But now they're pretty much on the same list with those kind of people. And they don't realize that if they were to set, if you took me and the hardest core MAGA guy and a member of the Taliban, put us all in a room, and you said, okay, go to this side of the room, based on this belief. If you believe a woman has a right to choose and abortion should be legal, go to this side of the room. And if you think the opposite, go to the other side of the room. And if you sat and did that on all the major issues, I would land over here with myself and the MAGA Republican would land over with the Taliban every single time. But anyway, Civicus outlines the state of civil rights through 5 categories: open, narrowed, obstructed, repressed, and closed. Open is the highest ranking, meaning that all people are able to practice civil liberties such as free speech, and the lowest is closed per Civicus. Instances that result in decline in open civic space include repressive legislation that curtails free speech and dialogue, obstacles to civil society activities, and operations and crackdowns on civil disobedience and peaceful demonstrations. The U.S. has now been classified as narrowed. The narrowed label is Civicus's assessment that while most people are able to exercise their rights of expression, free speech, and assembly, there are some attempts to violate these rights by the government. For example, Civicus cited crackdowns on pro-Palestinian protesters during the Biden administration after advocates took to the streets and staged college encampments to voice their discontent with the military assistance and funding the U.S. was sending to Israel. Students participated in demonstrations to demand their schools divest from any companies that profit from or have a relationship with Israel. Now, they said, we urge the United States to uphold the rule of law and respect constitutional and international human rights forms. Americans across the political spectrum are appalled by the undemocratic actions of the current administration. The White House has rejected Civicus' assessment. This is nonsense. President Trump is leading the most transparent administration in history, said Deputy Press Secretary Anna Kelly in an email statement on Tuesday. The narrowed category also reflects Civicus' assessment that while there is an existing free press, there may be restrictions due to regulation or political pressure on the media owners. And this comes at a time when the editorial decisions made by major media organizations and governing bodies have prompted much discussion. In February, the FCC launched an investigation into NPR and PBS due to concerns that they were violating federal law by airing commercials, which both newsroom CEOs deny. The FCC chair also spoke out against public funding for the two news sites. Jeff Bezos, the Amazon CEO and owner of the Washington Post, directed the organization to change the scope of its opinion pages in February, informing the team that they will be writing in support and defense of two pillars, personal liberties and free markets. We will cover other topics too, of course, but viewpoints opposing those pillars will be left to be published by others, Bezos said. That same month, the White House announced its press team will pick the reporters who participate in the press tool, a move the White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt said is about restoring back to the American people who President Trump was elected to serve. However, many journalism advocates criticize the act. This move tears at the independence of a free press in the United States. It suggests the government will choose the journalists who cover the president. In a free country, leaders must not be able to choose their own press corps. So, as I sit and read that, folks, I can't believe that I'm reading it out loud in 2025, but unfortunately that's where we are. And the Republican Party, Donald Trump, along with the help of Elon Musk, has completely hijacked the concept of free speech. And they say they're all about it. Trump said that he brought it back, which cracked me up because his followers never stopped bitching at us during Joe Biden's administration. They never shut up. They might have got fact-checked or they might have got some misinformation flagged or something like that. But they talked the entire time Joe Biden was in office. Now they're trying to act as though Donald Trump has brought back free speech and restored free speech. And when they say that they're being transparent to Elon Musk is that he's putting all the information on the Doge website, or he's putting all of the information on Twitter, which he owns and controls the narrative on. So you can't say that you're being transparent when you're putting the information on your own website where you control the narrative and where there's no consent allowed. And you know, there's people say, oh, well, there's all kinds of consent on Twitter. Yeah, try to step out of line with Elon Musk just 1 second and see how far it gets you. Ask Laura Loomer, who was one of Trump's closest allies, rode with him, traveled with him, and she was right there alongside him that whole time. And then she was saying, wait a minute, Elon just took away my blue check. He just demonetized me. He just banned me from posting for a couple of days. What happened? I thought I had free speech. Yeah, you had it till you stepped out of line with Elon and with Trump. And so as we go forward, it's going to be really hard to rein all of this back in. And I do encourage people to get out and to protest, but at the same time, I encourage you to be very careful these days. Because when Donald Trump says that he wants to lock up illegal protesters, what's he going to deem illegal? You know, what is he going to decide is illegal? And when he decides that, he can look to the Supreme Court and say, well, I have immunity for official acts. And so I can see why we made it on this watch list. It makes sense. It's terrifying that we ended up on it, and it's very disheartening and honestly heartbreaking. And again, I believe if I could go back and talk to my uncle and my grandpa all those years ago and say, this is where we ended up, they both would have stopped their argument and said, wait a minute, that's not what this country was ever supposed to be about. Folks, whatever you do, just be safe out there and continue to speak up and let people know that you don't agree with this kind of thing. Let the rest of the world know that not all of us here in America agrees with this radical regime that we have now, and just keep using your voice while you got it, because we're going to have to. And I thank y'all so much for subscribing here on the channel. We're closing in on 700,000 subscribers now and on the road to 1 million. I sure hope we get there, and I believe we can with your support. So if you haven't already, be sure and hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost anything. If you like this kind of content, it sure would help us out. So everyone, take care of yourself. Take care of your mental health. I know these stories just continue to get more and more depressing, but we have to stay strong. Take care of yourselves. Do whatever you have to do to take care of your mental health. And if that means unplugging and walking away, do so. And I just want everyone to know that I care about you, and I hope that everyone does well. But we're in for the long haul, folks. And reading articles like that is pretty depressing. But we have to stay focused, and we have to keep fighting for our democracy.